his whole contention is we should strut our stuff a little bit more. It's important. It's important to puff your chest out and say, I'm fucking great. And to be able to stand behind your values and the things that you care for and everything that you've accomplished thus far. Derek, what's your spiciest take?
I don't know how spicy it is, because if you're in the corporate world, I think this is going to resonate with a lot of people, but I think HR does more harm than good. It would probably be my most controversial take.
Is that like top of mind for you because I was just rambling before we got on air about corporate entropy?
No, I've thought about this a lot, and I think at every turn, HR, I can't think of one scenario where HR was helpful to me in a situation of challenge or adversity. It was always causing me more grief because there's red tape or taking more time. You know, essentially HR to me is a CYA, a cover your ass mechanism for companies not to get sued. And it's like a microcosm for what's a lot wrong with the way that America is in various, the medical industry is another one where now the medical industry is like suffering because the doctors have to check off a list rather than treat the patient. They have to like cover their ass with helping. And I feel like HR is that to corporations.
Yeah, there's definitely like a whole legal apparatus thing where when there's really challenging stuff, like, there's all sorts of company legal exposure and they kind of intermediate that. So that makes a lot of sense. I also think that there's just a huge dissonance between HR, who's there to help you. They're supposed to help you sort through some thorny issues with like org design or people or compensation or whatever. But there's so much dissonance because they haven't operated in the function that you're operating in. And so they don't there's very like surface level kind of misunderstanding. Like we just had like a week-long HR type of training on crucial conversations at Circle. And it was tough, man. There's just a lot of dissonance. Like the principles were okay. The principles were good. But there's just dissonance because they're not in the conversations every day.
Has HR helped you? Have you brought HR an issue before and they've actually given you insights or direction that helped you out in the situation?
No.
Yeah, me either. I wish we've been, I don't know, collectively 25 years in the space and I can't think of one thing. That's a bad success metric. That's a bad zero goose egg. And it's tough because these people are nice. It's just a lot of fluff because they also have to play this game of word salad, just a bunch of buzzword, like reading off of a textbook to make sure that they're covering their ass too, because they have to be fair and equitable across the entire spectrum and they can't put the company out on a ledge. So what does that leave you? It leaves you without any nuance and completely surface level jargon.
I think the analogy that almost kind of works here is they're like government. You still need them. It's still very important to have an HR department, and a lot of the big value that they provide is very much underappreciated. You just expect it to be there. You expect to get paid every month. You expect that your benefits administration to just be clean and you know where to go. You expect that you get a raise every year and that there's a process for that, and so those things people just kind of expect. And just like the government, right? Like you expect that you drive down the road and the road doesn't have any potholes in it and there's not a telephone pole down. Yeah, but similarly, I don't know how to say this without sounding like a douche. Like the smartest, brightest minds are not like clamoring to go be in HR. They want to go do something like radically creative and they want to go build and they want to go, create some impact and stuff like that. And similarly, how many people do you know that are like really excited about going to work for the government in our generation?
I don't really know many people in government, but I can't imagine that number's high.
Yeah.
There's one area of HR I think that's helpful, and I didn't think about this until recently. Like, yeah, these things exist. Is I have a neighbor who her job is in HR, but she is specifically in the employee engagement area of the company. Like her whole thing is to take feedback from the employees and suggest improvements to leadership as a way of creating a more psychologically safe and engaged culture within the company. I think that purpose for HR is really powerful. But in practice, like I don't know from the olden days in Ultimate Software, I I have a lot of examples where that sort of thing, where getting feedback from employees and then seeing that trickle down into performance reviews, like the way that they did performance reviews and tweaked it to make it less friction for the managers and easier for the employees to write up theirs. That sort of stuff is impactful. I think that takes HR.
Yeah. The broad brushstroke of HR blows, maybe not. There's definitely value in there and pockets of value and stuff. But I hear you. On balance, every day, are they like a resource to the humans in the organization? I don't know. I'm with you on that one. So here's the reason I asked you is because whenever there's like a boring panel discussion or something like that, I love when someone pipes up and asks this question to kind of get the conversation interesting. Like, what's your spiciest take? Makes people super uncomfortable.
Mm.
And I was at a live podcast recording of this New Hampshire podcast called Seacoast Stories the other night, and there was a panel, like they were just answering questions, and everyone was asking like really safe, really kind of boring questions, like, what's your favorite part about the Seacoast, stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And so I asked, like, what's your spiciest take? And the podcast host, he grabbed the mic. He's like, I love this question. He goes, humility is overrated. And I was like, ooh, spicy. Tell me more. And he went on this diatribe about how we've been raised to be humble. And he thinks it's creating this epidemic of self-doubt to the point of where we think we're not capable, we're not ready, because we're just meant to be kind of reserved in this kind of human this way to be humble. And so instead, like what he does is he said he was at some like yoga retreat or something, and he was like, everyone was going around and saying their mantra, and his was like, I'm fucking capable.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was like kind of cool. It's like very anti-yoga. He's like, his whole contention is we should strut our stuff a little bit more. It's important. It's important to puff your chest out and say, I'm fucking great, and to be able to stand behind your values and the things that you care for and everything that you've accomplished thus far. Don't do enough of it. And that was cool. I thought it was a really cool take.
I think he probably has a wrong definition of the word humble, because it sounds like to him humble also means timid. But I think there's a world where humility can meet confidence, and it doesn't mean make yourself smaller. It means you start where you are, but you're open to outside information and you are not tied to the identity of who you are in this moment. So you leave room for other information to make its way in. To me, that's humble. You have the humility to say, I might not know everything, but you have the confidence to say, I am fucking capable. So I think in his mind, humility might have been saturated to a point where you see shrinking, or he thinks that it means shrinking yourself. But to me, both things can exist where you are confident and you are showing competence in your field, but you also are saying, okay, I might not know everything here, so give me information.
Hey there, real quick. Can you do us a quick favor and hit the subscribe button down there somewhere? As a new and growing pod, subscribes are really, really important for us, for people to find us. We do this for free to provide you value in your work and in your life. And if you could just do this one thing for us, it would really help us to continue providing that value. So real quick subscribe, back to the video. Happy listening. I agree. Just like most stuff that we talk about in this podcast, there's a spectrum here, and
Yeah.
too much humility is a problem. And it started me reflecting on humility in the workplace, because this is something that I've actually dealt with a lot. Is I definitely tip too far on the humility spectrum. Too much humility. What's the definition of humility? A modest or low view of one's own importance. And what you're saying makes a ton of sense. You should have a modest or low view of your own importance in the world. You don't know everything. You're not an expert. And to be radically open-minded is to accept the fact that you're not an expert and to seek new information from people. And you need a healthy dose of humility to make that possible. But if you go too far out on that spectrum, I'm really not important. I am not going to stand up for myself. I'm not going to present myself as confident. I'm not going to puff out my chest and say that I'm doing a great job on this. I'm not going to remind myself of that. I'm not going to talk about it to other people. And this is, I think, the kind of insidious nature of what happens in the workplace. And I've seen it in many of my direct reports, is they're too humble. And what can happen is when you're too humble, you can get lost in the crowd in a corporate setting. What can potentially happen are really negative like work outcomes if you don't stand up for yourself, if you're not confident, if you don't puff your chest out, if you don't share your wins and your successes. People can take credit for your work. People cannot be compensated fairly. You can get talked over. You can hesitate to share your ideas or to speak up. So these are bad things.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I do. I just want to, I do want to get my point out there though. This is not a zero sum game to me. Whereas some things, there's one scale and you're either too extreme or you're not enough. I see this more like Madden, a video game where you have a player with a bunch of different attributes.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a humility at 100%, that doesn't mean that you're automatically going to shrink yourself down to be super small. It means that you might need to dial up another attribute of openness or courageousness to be able to put yourself out there at the risk of being vulnerable and having somebody say you're wrong and being humble enough to say, tell me more about that. So I think it's important to say this is not a too humble thing. There are other attributes along your player profile that you might need to dial up.
Yeah, it's not a zero-sum game. I totally agree with you there. But I would also make the argument that the people that go too far out on the humility spectrum are often lacking in the other things.
Okay, that's fair.
Broad brush strokes.
Yep.
Anyway,
Yep.
This was my experience. Too far on the humility spectrum, not nearly far on the confidence spectrum. Far enough on the confidence spectrum.
True.
And
Yep.
And it created some of these kind of negative outcomes for me. I wanted to talk about a very specific one and the antidote to that. So specific being, I'm doing all this great work. I'm a smart, driven person. I've got my head down. I'm kicking ass. I'm doing work. I'm making things happen. I'm creating an impact. But nobody knows about it. Nobody knows about the work that I'm doing. And so maybe somebody takes credit, or my boss like takes credit for some of the work. Come time for a promotion, I didn't get it. Or I don't have the confidence to kind of speak up and share my point of view in this meeting. Promoting your work, I think, is a very, very important thing to do, especially at a company that's bigger, that's growing. It's a little easier with small companies because everybody can see you. But as the company starts to get bigger, you actually need to make a bit of an extra effort to let other people know that you're doing work and it's good work. And time again, I've seen people kind of fall over on this. And it's unfortunate because they're doing awesome work. Nobody knows about it. And so they start to build a reputation because not because they're bad or their work is bad, but because maybe the only interaction that their skip level manager had with them was this one thing where they stuttered too much in a conversation. And now that all that sticks is like, Sam is the one who stutters. Not that Sam is creating these brilliant reconciliations and has solved all of these problems over here. It's just Sam is the one who stutters. So promoting your work, I think, like, is a very important skill. Is this something that's on your radar or has ever kind of come up on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, I see it often, to your point, and as a manager, I make it a point to try to shore up those opportunity areas for others and like share their work for them at times. But I think that this is one of those ones where if you do not share, one of the implications in terms of money is you might not get promoted. Even though you're the most deserving person for that promotion, you might get looked over because Frank over there is promoting even the smallest things really well. Where I think if there are two traits, being really good or being really good at sharing and telling others, I think statistics are pretty clear. The metrics are pretty clear that that other person who's sharing has a higher probability for that promotion. I see it all the time.
Right. Excellent work that's done quietly versus average work that's communicated well. Like the latter is going to probably get the promotion, get the money.
And if you look at the C-suite, even executives in companies, and you hear them talk, you interact with them as you get up and you work your way up in the ladder, you realize, holy cow, the wool is removed from your eyes. Like, this is who is in the VP chair sometimes, right? It's like
No,
that
totally.
person is just really good at managing up. And it's like a lot of different things. And there are really great upper level executives as well. But some people just make it by having that as like a natural talent that they have of sharing.
Yeah. There's Shreyas Doshi, he calls it a optics driven work versus impact driven work. Impact driven work actually makes the business go. You're coding the thing and pushing it to production. You're closing the deal with the customer. You're fielding a conversation on customer support, whatever. You're actually making the business. You're creating an impact. Optics driven work is all the other stuff. It's the weekly update meeting. It's the presentation at all hands. It's the board meeting. It's the email that goes out here, whatever. It's optics because there's no actual business value being driven. It's more communication and alignment and all of that kind of stuff. It's primarily optics. And what you're saying is, I think a lot of people, they get really fucking good at the optics thing and you can shoot up or have been able to shoot up. Well, I think there's another class of people that are incredible at the impact thing, and people just naturally know that, and they shoot up, and that's great. I think the argument that we're making here is you should have some kind of healthy balance of both, and optics-driven work or promotion of your work. That's a muscle, just like any of these other human skill muscles. I also know that there's an allergic reaction to the word promotion, and this is probably where a lot of people like, ugh, like, what the hell does it mean to promote myself? Do I need to like post on LinkedIn? Do I have to have a personal brand?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned brand because there's a saying that I've heard. It says, "Being unknown is more dangerous to your career than occasionally being wrong." And there's a report that goes along with it that says leaders or people that have strong brands at companies have a 3.7 times, that's 370% greater probability of higher pay, and the higher pay is 20 to 30% higher than their peers.
That's pretty sick. How do you think brand is defined in that study? Do you know?
Reputation for getting things done, or the perception of getting things done, right? If like, for example, for me, if I have a team, whenever somebody does something really great, I get on all the blast horns. I get on Slack channels. I just celebrate. I sign up for the all hands meeting to celebrate them. But how does that reflect on me? It's like I'm their manager. So it reflects on me, even though I'm sharing the spotlight with them, right? I'm curious, like, you're probably getting to this, but I think that you probably have a lot of good insights here. Like, as an individual contributor, what are some ways that they could shine and share and promote their work?
Yeah, I think people again like this allergic reaction kind of comes from like I don't want to put myself on a billboard and do all this kind of cringy shit. Like, I just want to do good work. And I hear you. I totally agree. You do not need to do any cringy stuff. There are just some very small, very incremental, very subtle things that you can do to ensure that people know that you're doing good work. And it has the knock-on benefit of also getting your work done better and faster anyway. So it's like a win-win. And I think about it on 3 dimensions: comms, convo, and Prezo. So comms, build a foundation of communication and transparency with your work. What does that mean? You're working on a bunch of stuff. You're working on a project. You need to ensure that whenever somebody wants to know what is going on with the thing that you're working on, they can find it immediately. And they can find it without directly engaging with you. And you're pushing information to the right people at the right times. And you're also creating a pull of if people want to pull information from you, they know where to pull it. So anytime, let's go through like an active example of one of these. I'll use myself. I'm working on stablecoin FX right now. We want to create the Forex market on blockchains. And so there's a whole project and product initiative that we're running at Circle. I want to be known as the stablecoin FX guy. So that means that anytime that somebody wants to know, like, hey, that like whole stablecoin FX thing, like what's going on with that project? They know exactly where to go. And so tactically, what does this look like? This looks like you have a repository of information. We use Coda. There's Confluence, there's Notion, there's Asana, there's like all of these things. There's friggin' Google Drive, right? In this repository, you have all of the relevant stuff. You have the roadmap, you have the product definition documents, you have the strategy documents, you have all the customer notes and the calls, and it's organized perfectly so that someone can come in for the first time and just be able to navigate quick and see where it is. Nobody does that well. Nobody. Or they rely on like a project manager to do it for them. So, and that's easy shit. You set that up and then it's just there. And then also you're pushing information. So we run a bi-weekly status meeting, and then we're also going to start pushing email and Slack information based on that meeting. So now not only like when someone is thinking about it, now when they're not thinking about it, they boom, get some information about it. That's always coming from me. They always know that like my name is plastered all over it. They know that I'm the one that's organizing all of that information. So there's this foundation of like, if there's a question or if this thing pops up in someone's mind, like they see my fucking face. I'll hang on that one. What do you think?
I love it. I also would say that conciseness matters in this arena.
Mm-hmm.
We've all been a part of the project manager updates or the weekly status meetings that are just so long that you click away. I think about the book that we read a while ago called Writing for Busy Readers.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important principle to pull from here is like, yeah, there's a pull system. You should have all of the details stored away so that somebody could really dive in. But when you're posting to Slack or posting on email, try to keep it as concise as possible so that you give them links to learn more, but you're engaging with the audience at the time that you're sending the comms so that they get the cliff notes, they get the TLDR, but with all of the other stuff with it, because people are just going to click away if it's too long and verbose.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And this is another place that all this falls over is word salad, wall of text, gobbledygook. That actually
Again,
has the
balance,
adverse,
right?
yeah, has like the adverse impact. Because if I'm getting that pushed from Sam every 2 weeks, I'm like, A,
How
I don't
much do
want
you
to
think
read it.
templates matter here? Like the same structure for every update or weekly update that's like
I think consistency and standardization is incredibly important. I don't think that you should have yourself to that standard on day one, but you should strive to get to a place where things are consistent and standard. Absolutely. Because then people know what to expect. It's Friday. Every Friday, there's 4 bullets of the most important things that happened in local stables in people's inbox. And it's just a sentence. And then I can click, click, click to learn more. And it's
do you
like,
put your personality in those updates?
I try
Or do
to.
you make it as professional as possible?
Again, like I think you need to balance this. Go. What was the that we did an episode on this kind of stuff of like bringing yourself to work, your personality to work. I can't remember which number it is, but I'll put it in the show notes. Uh, I think it's valuable to do that, but in the right doses, right? Um, would I make it like this long funny email with like a bunch of memes? No, we're doing something very serious. We're trying to recreate like this capital market like on on blockchains. I'm not going to be like, and for this meme, like that. So I think there is like a vibe that you need to kind of sense, but at the same time, I always try to put a little bit of like positivity and spin and personality into these things. I want my like weekly update meeting to not just be like wah 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 wah, right? Like I want it to be something that people actually don't skip or don't just sit and look on their phones the entire time. So I always look for those like little tiny incremental things that you can do.
Do you feel like it's your place as the leader to also, you said positivity, but inspire or to bring people like to increase the interest in whatever you're doing?
Yeah, there's this whole element which I candidly like this. I'm using a live example, especially as companies get bigger. You need to be able to get people excited about what you're doing because you're also fighting for resources and you're fighting for attention. And everybody's busy. And so the ability to paint a vision that's exciting and then consistently remind people about that vision and then show that you're making progress towards that vision, that only creates more attention on it. And so, yeah, like vision painting and alignment is really really important. And if you want to rally like a big group of people behind you to go and solve some complex hairy thing and do a bunch of work, because you're never going to be able to get cool big things done by yourself. It a lot of it cascades from vision. What the hell are we doing? Why are we doing it? And that doesn't have to be.
Sounds scary. As somebody that doesn't, I'm thinking about the person that doesn't put themselves out and promote themselves because what we just described, even in the first one, comms. That seems scary. What do you do to like, yeah, if you get everybody on board from day one, that's great. But it sounds like there's a lot of resistance naturally occurring here to get to that place.
Yeah, I think there's also a functional thing here where there's more of that necessary in some roles than others. I don't know how it works in your world, but in my world, it's product, and we're thinking about these, you know, 5 to 10 to 15 year product strategies and dealing with like a limited set of resources of engineers, and we're a product led organization. So what we do kind of drives the business. And so there's a lot more of that vision painting stuff that needs to happen. But I don't know, let me run another example. You're an accounting team and you're using QuickBooks and you want to migrate to Oracle. It's a huge fucking project and you're the one that's leading it. Like, you should be able to get people excited or at least be able to articulate the why and make sure that everybody understands it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to stand up on a stage with your shining armor and be like, follow me into battle. But you can create clarity and creating.
yeah, using that example. So let's say like we're moving away from QuickBooks to Oracle. Doesn't mean that there's only going to probably be one product person that's leading that thing. And there's going to be a bunch of people in that project. That's a huge project. Everybody's got a piece of work to do. Everybody's got a job to do. Me, if I am in charge of the data migration, as an example, I am moving data from QuickBooks to Oracle. I'm going to present my update, but I'm going to try to ladder up to that vision that I didn't create, but it makes sense in the bigger picture. So I think that's where like maybe tying the dots here is like you're not always going to be the face of a project, but you're going to be the face of your assignment, and that assignment has a bigger picture. When you give that update connecting to that vision of whatever you're doing and whatever project you're on, I think that's where everybody else be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You don't want to be the person that says, oh, I moved data from QuickBooks to Oracle today, and we only saw 5% data failure.
No, totally. Yeah. Wah, 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 wah. Dude, I don't know. Maybe I wrote a post about this a while ago or something. I think that every single person that puts on their clothes in the morning and goes and sits down at their computer and cracks open their laptop and has a sip of coffee and then gets to work and starts working on a thing, they should be able to connect that thing to the highest level company objectives. They should be able to tie like this loose line to why this thing matters that I'm working on. Why am I doing this now? And it can be very loose, but they should be able to do it. And if they can't, that's a problem. And that exists at any level in the chain for any function, you know? Product-led organization, big new product initiative, that's maybe a lot clearer. Like, we're going to try to create our 10 to 15-year vision so we can go and build this thing and create a bunch of money. Accountant, I'm doing these reconciliations for accounts payable. I'm building a spreadsheet. Why? So we can pay our bills. Why? So that we can ensure that these vendors are going to keep supporting us. Why? Because the vendors make sure that our product goes. Why? We want to make sure the product goes so that we can make money. Why? Because we're trying to go public next year. You know what I mean? Like, you should be able to tie that tie that thing all the way through. And yeah, that's just a. And if you can't draw that connection, you can either figure that out with your boss or whatever, or there's a problem. There's like a there's a problem in like your job or something. You should be able to draw that very clearly.
So that was the first pillar.
Pillar 2, convo. This is being where the conversation is. So the first one's comms. If I need information, I know where to go to find it, or I'm getting information pushed to me. The second one is convo. If there's a conversation happening somewhere in the company about my thing, I better be there. And if I'm not there, it should make me uncomfortable that it happened and I wasn't there, or at least I should know why. So this is more about you being in the right rooms at the right times and presenting the information when it's appropriate for you to do so.
Mm-hmm.
If there's like conversations happening about local stables at like some product meeting that I'm not in, or there's an offsite, and they're talking about local stables stuff, like that should stress me out, rightfully so. Because I want to be that guy. Or if it's the Oracle migration project, like I am the Oracle migration person. I need to be in those conversations, or I need to delegate those conversations to someone actively. Mm-hmm. Or, if I'm managing the data migration for it, like I need to be there. This also extends to when there are presentations about it. If we're sharing it at the team meeting or at the all hands or wherever, like I should be doing it. It's coming from my mouth, or I'm making a decision on somebody else doing it. And I'm saying this like very black and white because I actually do think it is pretty black and white. If you have a boss that's like constantly presenting for you on these kinds of important things, I would label that a pretty big problem. So always being the one to be in the conversation. And that also extends to like in-person stuff or, on Slack. I created like a local stables channel. You best believe I'm keeping that sucker alive, dude. Like if there isn't a message in there for like a couple of weeks, I'm posting articles, I'm just sharing information out into the void. Like that thing is a heartbeat because of me. If it starts dying, I'm the one coming in with the defibrillator, or however the hell you pronounce it, and shocking that thing back to life.
You are watching too many ER shows.
Yeah, dude. I'm totally the pit. I'm on these.
All right. So 2 Convo. What's 3?
There's Prezo. Okay, so I like kind of stuck into this one too. You present. You always present.
Yeah, I like
so
this one.
I kind of jammed 2 and 3 together as well. Never, ever, ever let someone present your work for you unless there's a great reason to do so. Hey, Sam, we're going to talk about local stable stuff. You can't come to the board meeting. Like, okay, sure, skip level, all good. Like, here's your talking points. Let me know what other information you need. But you're always taking that opportunity to stand up in front of somebody or to record yourself or to send the update. You're always the one presenting. Like, very, very important.
How do you deal with resistance to promoting your work? If, for example, I'm in the conversation or I'm presenting, and there's like a strong opinion that is in a public space that is counterproductive to what I'm suggesting and what I'm recommending we do or what we did, the approach that we took. Do you have any advice for me?
Role play with me.
Okay, let's say let's stick on the data migration thing. We decided to use technology ABC to do the migration, and although we saw a 5% failure, we see that as a significant success. And let's say for you, your stance is if you would have used technology DEF, you could have reduced to 2.5%, right? If you would have had a little bit of foresight, Derek.
Yeah. So it's like a pushback on,
like basically questioning the approach that we took, that they hooked on to the 5% failure of something, where from an industry perspective that there's a certain level of expected failure percentage, right?
What you're hitting on is one of the primary reasons that there is misalignment with teams on projects. And it's because the question rarely gets answered sufficiently at the beginning of the project of how do we measure success. It is always real time, really fast. Okay, we're going to start this project. Let's just get working on it. And then you work and you work and you work. And then there's an outcome. And then you debate whether or not that outcome is good because you didn't front load that thinking at the beginning of the project. And so successful projects always actually challenge those success metrics right up front before fingers hit keyboards or people are calling customers or whatever. How, like, at the logical completion of this project, how are we going to know we did a good job? And how can we objectively prove that? What is the metric? And the metric could be anything. It could be success rate. It could be customer sentiment. It could be number of new users. It could be revenue, whatever it is. But how can we objectively prove that we did a good job? And so if I'm leading that project, the data migration, it's on me to define that before I start working. And to get back to the point of comms, I have a repo of all of the information, right? And in that, I have some kind of document that says, this is the project, here's how long it's going to take, here's the people that are involved, here's why we're doing it, here's how we're going to measure success. And then in my drumbeat of communication, as I'm running said project, I'm reminding people of the success metric. And once I have data to report against it, I'm reporting against it. So success rate, like we wanted a 5% success rate or failure rate, I think was what you called out. We kicked it off. Okay, we're live. Now we have live data. We started at 10% failure rate, but it's early. We're aggregating data. We're going to manage that down over time. And we think we can get under our 5% target. Okay, we got there. We've done a good job. So then that feedback that comes at the end of the project, it's like, no, dude, look, I created the clarity for you way back when we started. Here's where it was documented. And then here are all of the communications that went out of us reminding ourselves what the success criteria was and how we were doing against it. Completely clears that ambiguity and will eliminate those conversations. And those happen all the fucking time, dude. Like that, because it's not, because people don't effectively front load the conversation of like, how are we going to know we did a good job?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And it makes so much sense. Alignment at the beginning is not enough. Reminding throughout is where it leaves little to no room for ambiguity by the end and by the result.
That's why pushing information is important, because it's like, because it's really easy. Say in that same scenario, you aligned on the success metric way back in the day, and then it was a 9-month project, and nobody ever thought about it or heard about it again until the thing was launched and running, and then someone's like, hey, like 5% isn't good. And you're like, yeah, it is. Like, we talked about it in this one conversation 9 months ago. That may be true, but like, you should never assume that everybody is going to remember all of your shit, all the stuff that's important to you. And so that's why drumbeat is important. You're pushing that stuff. Hey, by the way, remember, like we said, 5%. It's been on every, like our goal is 5%. It's been on every single push. Now we're reporting against it. See, 5% still. We're over it, but we're going to manage it down. Like every single one.
I think that's a pretty bulletproof framework, to be honest. I really like it.
Yeah. The hard part is when like you're working on a thing where it's not clear how to measure success.
There's some ambiguity in like how to measure. What does success look like? Well, we have hypotheses, but in terms of measuring the data, like getting a data-driven outcome, sometimes it's not that simple. For a data migration, it's probably the simplest thing that you could pick. But if you want to try to measure engagement in your funnel, sales funnel, you could still do that if you have the right like behavioral data coming in of like how your users are interacting with your website. But there are scenarios out there that is not so easy sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work on. I'll give you two: product marketing and strategy. They're both strategic functions. Product marketing is like you're doing a lot of writing. You're writing positioning briefs and messaging, and then for strategy, you're writing strategy docs, and creating presentations. But you're not responsible for like executing on any of the work. You're just creating these like ideas and structuring them and stuff. So it's like, what am I going to measure myself on with a strategy project? Like how many decks I create? Like that's fucking hard. And that's just a broader like discomfort with strategy work in general that I always had and that I know other people have. But then it really gets important again to like over communicate. Just back to the point of comms is like, am I constantly communicating with my customers, with my management, or with the people that have a stake in this thing to get the vibe? Is this stuff helpful? Is it accretive? Are we doing a good job? Like, here's what we agreed to. Here's my pipeline of projects. You can still create that kind of transparency when there's not like a specific metric to be measured, but it's more of an art than a science for some functions, and that's just something you got to manage.
Yeah, even if the art is people feedback, right? Like customer feedback, sentiment scores. There's always if you don't have the right outcomes, you might be measuring the wrong inputs, or I don't know. I forget exactly how that goes, but
well, yeah, I mean, like, I know we're coming up on time here. Like, input and output metrics is like another very common thing to understand.
in reading the book Working Backwards, it goes through like the Amazon executives and like their path to like such like scaled and accelerated growth. And Jeff Bezos famously said, the anecdotes are usually right. If your data is not telling you that, then you're measuring the wrong data. Like, so it's interesting.
That's cool. It's there's a cool corollary there with health and fitness, where we I think we get like bogged down and kind of whipsawed a lot with the next study that comes out, about the new hot thing, and then everybody focuses on that.
It's like, wait, water's not good for you anymore? What?
Right, exactly. When there's not like an objective thing to say, yeah, like, is water good for you or not, or whatever. You can look at like conventional wisdom and anecdote over like thousands and thousands of years. Like, is like movement and exercise good for you? Like, yeah, it is. Like, it's a net good for you, not just because of all these studies that we have, but because over thousands and thousands of years, everybody is like, yep, movement and exercise is good for you. There's probably some truth to that. It's like wives' tales. Wives' tales generally are like correct because they're just conventional wisdom from years and years and years. So like anecdote normally is actually quite powerful. And yeah, we tend to get obsessed with the things that we can measure. But obviously always like a balance there is more important.
Cool, man. This is a good pod. I think this was valuable. I like the framework.
Zip it up, zip it out.
See you in a bit. Oh, see you one another time. Later.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with us at The Workflow. If you like what you just heard, could you take 1 second and give us a like, subscribe, follow, or leave a review on the platform you're listening to this podcast? It will really help us out as we're growing the pod. We'd also love to hear from you. If you have ideas for future topics you'd like us to cover, folks you'd want us to chat with, or any feedback in general, just shoot us a note at workflowshow@gmail.com. Again, that's workflowshow@gmail.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.